All right, so today I'm going to show you how to track out your sessions in Logic Pro. Maybe you got to send out your session to a mixing engineer, perhaps you sold your beats and they're asking for the individual tracks. Here's how you do just that in Logic Pro, or at least how I like to do things. And I'm going to call it the right way, but this is how I do things, and I'll explain why I do things the way I do it. First things first, I usually take my marker over here, my project length marker, and I bring it down to about the length of the song itself. I leave a couple bars to catch any audio tail ends that's happening here. So that's step one. Step two, I like to select the amount of tracks that I'm exporting. So I decide what tracks are being exported and not Logic. So I'm going to select this one, this one, this one, this one, and these three. Otherwise, there is an option to export all tracks without selecting them, but then you're going to include and get audio files for your hidden tracks, which is something typically I don't want. It's also going to include master tracks for your folder tracks, and that's something I don't want either. I just want the individual tracks, and here's the best way to do that is just select what you want rather than weaving through all the audio files later and deleting everything you don't need. So now that we select our project length, we select the tracks that we want to export. Now we go to File, Export, and you'll see this option over here. It's the first one. It says 7 tracks as audio files. That's because I have 7 tracks selected. All tracks as audio files will include every track that's in your session, and I typically don't want that, so that's why I just selected my tracks. So we get this option here, 7 tracks as audio files. I'm going to go ahead and select that. The first thing I usually do is I create a new folder, and I just call it stems. I usually place it in the same folder as the session itself for organizational sake. And then you get sort of a couple options that you need to look at and understand. So the first option here is range. Now mine is set to extend file length to project end, which is this marker we did here at step 1. But by default, Logic selects trim silence at file end. Now this is okay, but if you want every single audio file to be the exact same length from top to bottom or bottom to top, then you want to select either export cycle range only or export file length to project end. Now I selected our project end with this marker over here, but if you want to use the cycle range only, you can just take your cycle range and select what you want to export and use that way as well. But I just use the marker end myself. Both is the same thing, so it's really up to you how you want to go about it. So we selected this one over here. If you use the trim silence at file end, it's going to not have the files the exact same length. Everything will start at bar 1, but if there's nothing happening from, let's say, bar 10 to 15 and so on, it's just going to stop the audio file from there. And something you may or may not want, it doesn't really matter, but if you're sort of like a little bit OCD and you want your files to be exact same length, all of them, then this is how you do it. Next thing, you want to select your file format. I usually use it or leave it as WAV. You select your bit depth. I'm going to leave it as 24 bits. Then you have a couple options here to bypass your effects, any automation you may have. I usually leave that unticked because I want to include all that stuff. All right, so feature item here. I did not cover the normalize portion in this export window. Typically speaking, you can just leave it to off. Never really leave it to on, otherwise it's going to like normalize your audio and all your volume levels will be a little bit different because Logic normalized it. I sometimes just leave it on overload protection only, and what that would do is if it detects that the audio is going to clip, it's going to smooth that out a bit, so you're not going to get that crazy distortion. So you can just leave it on overload protection only or set it to off and you should be good to go. Now back to the video. And then you can select the pattern to your file name. I usually just leave it as the track name, but I didn't do it here, but just make sure that each track is actually labeled properly so that whoever you're setting the stems to, they know what each track is. This is a little bit not labeled properly, but you get the idea. And then from there, you can just go ahead and create your folder like we already did and export it to there. Now, before we do this, I just want to let you know what's included and what's not. What's not included in this stem out is all of your bus tracks. So if you have any effects happening on buses, that's not going to be included on your audio file, so it may sound a little bit different. And any effects that you have on your master output will not be included either, and that's for good reason. You don't want the master effects to be affecting each track on an individual basis. It's really meant to just affect it as a whole. So that's why Logic doesn't include that. As for the buses, there is a way to export those bus tracks as audio files. And I could do another separate video if you want to learn how to do that. It's a little bit extra work, but generally speaking, this is how you typically want to track out your sessions. So now that we understand what is getting tracked out and what's not, we have our files selected. We selected our range, file format, and bit depth. We made sure the pattern of the file name is what we like. We can go ahead and hit export. And now we'll just wait. All right, so now it exported the tracks. Let's go ahead and bring in those files. And here it is right here. So you can see the start and end time is all the same on all of the files itself. And that was by design. And now you can go ahead and take this stem file, zip it up, and send it over to whoever you need to send it to. All right, so that right there is how you track out your sessions in Logic Pro 10. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do have any more questions on this, we can go ahead and talk in the comment section below. If you did like this video, remember thumbs up, share this video, and of course hit that subscribe button for more good videos like this one. I'll talk to y'all soon. Later. Peace.